Dreamers, it's Kayla King and welcome to my channel. I'm officially joining YouTube and more specifically Authortube, and I thought the perfect way to do that was with the newbie tag. So let's jump right in with question number 1. How did you find out about Authortube? So when I was in graduate school, I was already watching videos that were part of BookTube. I really loved books and I loved listening to book reviews, specifically ones for books that I loved, but also finding new books to add to my TBR. And through that, I did find Christine Riccio, and at the time she was also starting to talk about some of her writing. And from there, it just made me realize how much I loved seeing other writers talk about their process. I was getting to the point where I was going to be graduating from that program, and I already knew I was going to miss that sense of community and togetherness that I felt during grad school. And because of this, I did seek out other channels. Some of my favorites at the time were Kim Chance and Alexa Dunn. And most recently, one of my favorite author-tubers to follow has been Lindsay Puckett. And the thing I love about all of these channels is that we not only get to see writing vlogs and craft advice, you get to champion your favorite authors and see their dreams come true. I felt this so strongly when watching Christine Riccio's book tour for Again But Better and getting to see her book on shelves and seeing the readers' faces and how excited they were about it. It really just made me feel so proud for her. I had been watching for so many years at that point, and getting to hear the title reveal and then getting to see the cover reveal and knowing that she put so much time and love and effort into this book, I was not only excited for her, I was just so proud as a viewer. What genre do you write in? For this question, I am going to focus more specifically on my fiction, though I do write poetry as well. For my current work in progress, it is a young adult speculative fiction novel, but I'm also really looking forward to getting back into my young adult fantasy series when this book is done. What is your preferred writing tense, point of view, and category of story? So it's a little bit different for all the types of writing that I do, but for my poetry, I specifically use second person point of view. And in this is the narrator addressing the you of the piece. And I find this works really well with my stream of consciousness type of writing that I do for poetry. But for my fiction, I always prefer a past tense and a third person point of view. And most specifically, I choose a close point of view when I'm in third person. So this means I can stay focused on one character. It's not an omniscient narrator where we have the whole view of the world. It's one character, but it's a little bit distant. So it's not Cameron saying, I did this. It's saying Cameron walked down the street. And I find this works really well for me because I specifically love world building, and this allows me to pepper in those details that I really love without it sounding strange with Cameron saying, I see this, I hear this. While I have plans to write adult fiction someday, currently my passion is firmly focused on young adult fiction. Are you a plotter, pantser, or plantser? So before the pandemic, I certainly considered myself a plotter. I didn't think I would ever stray from this process of writing. But during quarantine, time just seemed ethereal. It was really difficult to pinpoint what time felt like. So through this process, I deviated slightly from my plotting and instead turned to discovery writing. Now, I like this term a little bit better than pantser because I wasn't necessarily flying by the seat of my pants. I had a roadmap. I knew my destination. Are you a self-published, published, or yet to be published author? Now for this, I suppose I'm a little bit of all those things. My debut micro collection of poetry called These Are the Women We Write About was published in 2018 by the Poetry Annals. At the beginning of 2021, 4 of my poems were self-published in a book called Pages Penned in Pandemic. I was the founder and editor-in-chief of this project, and it encapsulated writing from 2020. And most of the stories, poems, essays, novel excerpts didn't have anything to do with the pandemic, but they did need to be specifically written during that time. And I knew as I was collecting these pieces that I wanted to have a few of my own to really stand as a time capsule for this point in our lives. Something that I truly love about this project is that when all was said and done, when the book was published, All of our proceeds were donated to 826 National, an organization which supports young writers. And being able to tell young people that their stories matter is something that is truly important to me. And I'm so excited that we continue to donate to this beautiful organization. For my current WIP, which is that YA speculative novel, I am planning on pursuing traditional publishing. And for this book, I was actually already in the query trenches. At the end of 2018, I had received quite a few full manuscript requests, and I was excited about the progress that I was making. But then in February 2019, I realized I needed to do a total overhaul of this book. And that's what I did. And that's what I'm still working on. But as soon as the line edits are done for this book, I'm planning on re-entering the query trenches and hopefully seeing this book traditionally published someday. If you're not yet published, what is your dream publishing house and/or dream agent? From experience, I know how disappointing it can be to receive a rejection from a dream agent. So I made myself a promise that this time, when I go into the query trenches, I'm not going to have a list of dream agents, but rather I want somebody who's going to be there for the long haul. I want someone to champion my work and myself as a writer. I want someone to fall in love with this book. I want someone to understand this book. And for me, that's more important than any hypothetical dream agent. I think too often, the dream agents might surprise you. You might not know until you get on that phone call or hear the feedback. And once you do, you know that that person is the right fit for you. And I think the same goes for a dream publishing house. Until you know how an editor is going to react, how that house is going to support you and maybe give you the marketing and tools you need to be the best version of yourself, you're not going to know that they're a dream come true. But I am lucky enough to have so many people in my life who support my writing and this book. And there's one specifically who just continues to understand this book. And because of this, I hope to find an agent and an editor someday who are just like him. What kind of Authortube videos can we expect to find on your channel? I absolutely love this question. For myself, I know the kind of content I want to create is going to be a mix of the videos I already love to watch on Authortube, along with some of the content that I've searched for in the past and haven't been able to find. So what does this mean? For the content I love, this is easy. For myself, I know watching vlogs about writing days or writing craft videos or even bookish content makes me feel more connected to storytellers and writing as a whole. So these are some of the videos you can expect from my channel. Well, there are fantastic videos already out there about the querying process, the traditional publishing process, indie author journeys, and self-publishing how-tos. The kind of content I found myself looking for had to do with literary magazines. I know for many writers, they might be working on poetry or short stories, and maybe they don't have a full body of work yet. This was where I found myself in 2015 when I started submitting to literary magazines. And I know back then, I was really just trying to figure things out for myself. How to submit to magazines, how to organize submissions, how to find reputable places to even submit my work to. I'm certainly looking forward to creating content that really delves into this world. Last year, when I founded Pages Penned in Pandemic, I was also searching for videos on how to run a literary magazine. I had been an editor for an online magazine before, but never really had much of the organizational or editorial responsibilities that came with being an editor-in-chief. And once again, I figured it out for myself. Now, I'm excited to announce that I do have a new collective called the ELPIS Pages. And this was born out of the events in Texas this week. Though I don't live in Texas, I am a woman, and I made a promise to support women by speaking up and using my art to do so. So I've created a new collective which will have work by self-identifying women, all on the topic of womanhood. Whether it be poetry, short stories, novel excerpts, or essays, I'm really looking forward to diving in, finding some beautiful work, and collecting another stellar book to put out into the world. Like Pages Penned in Pandemic, I will be donating all proceeds from this collective, and they will be going to the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, which supports safe and legal abortions as well as reproductive rights. These are issues that are important to all women, and as women, we must stick together. If you currently have writing that sounds like it might be a great fit for this collective, Let me know in the comments below. As we near publication, I'm going to be taking you through the process of creating a press or a magazine, working on branding, creating marketing, organizing submissions, sending acceptances, and also sending that dreaded rejection. It's something that no editor likes to do, but I know for myself, I try to be as uplifting and positive as possible, and to see rejection not as a negative, but as a redirection. Let me know in the comments if there's anything specific you would like to know about this process. When did you start writing? So I do have a few stories from elementary school, many of them signed in crayon, so I'm not sure if I can really consider that the point when I started writing. But I do know for myself that in 7th grade, we did a poetry unit, and I absolutely fell in love with the craft of poetry. And I wrote poems all the way up through high school. I didn't really consider myself a writer. It was just something fun that I did, nothing I ever really showed anybody or had plans on showing anyone. And then I had the opportunity in 12th grade to take an experimental writing class. And the great thing was we got to write poetry, and I felt really comfortable doing so. But we also learned about new types of writing, flash fiction, satire, short stories, etc. And from that class, I knew I wanted to tell stories. I fell in love with the art of writing, and I haven't lost that love yet. What was the first story you wrote? My final project for experimental writing, and our teacher told us we could do whatever we wanted. And my best friend excitedly leaned across his desk and said, I think you should write a story about fairy tales, but more specifically, fairy tale characters. Now, this was before Once Upon a Time, so this felt like a really fresh and unique idea and something that I loved. I loved fairy tales. And so that first story through became something really important to me. I worked on it a little bit that summer when I went to England, and I do see those influences from England in that story now. And I'm so excited to say that when I'm done with my current work in progress, I'm going to find my way back to that series about fairy tale characters. What authors have inspired your writing most? Now, of all the questions on the list, I definitely think this is the most difficult just because there are so many tremendous authors out there who've influenced me as a writer, as a reader, and specifically my stories. So to make it easy, I'm going to start this list off with J.K. Rowling. I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone when I was 8 years old, and I knew from that day on that I wanted to tell stories. And even looking at my battered little copy from when I was 8 years old to my much larger collection that I have now, it reminds me how much I loved that story. It reminds me that stories are magic, and it reminds me that my stories are important. For this current work in progress, my early inspiration came from Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, as well as Johnny Panic and the Bible of Dreams by Sylvia Plath. Now from there, I do take inspiration from stories that are a little bit darker, but at the root have human authenticity. For this, I would say We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This book is exquisite, and it broke my heart in every possible way. I would also add Fell of Dark and 10 Miles One Way by Patrick Downs, as well as Away We Go by Emil Ostrovsky. Some earlier inspirations include the Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld, The Giver by Lois Lowry, as well as the Riverman series by Aaron Starmer. The series is stunning. It's a middle grade, so I don't feel like it gets the credit it deserves as being a truly terrifying and haunting book series. If you haven't read it yet, please do yourself the favor and pick up this entire series. Some additional inspirations would be Hilary T. Smith and her book Wild Awake, as well as Kayla Ankram's book The Wicker King. I'm actually really excited to be using that as a comp title when it comes time to get back into the query trenches. As Greek mythology plays a very important role in my current work in progress, I'd also like to add Sarah Ruhl and her play Eurydice, as well as Madeline Miller and her novels The Song of Achilles and Circe. Again, if you haven't read these books, what are you waiting for? Do you schedule your writing time? Now, as someone who is very organized, I would like to say that I do schedule my writing time out. But as my job has become a little more time-consuming in the past few months, I haven't always had the time to schedule the writing time. Currently, I know every day during my lunch break that I'm going to have 30 to 50 minutes to commit to my writing, and I love that time. It is so cathartic and such a breath of fresh air in the middle of the workday. I also know for me that a large chunk of my writing is going to happen on the weekends. So while I don't necessarily schedule out the hours, these are 2 chunks of time that I know consistently are going to be there for me. Do you type on a computer, typewriter, or write everything out by hand, or some blend of both? Now, for my fiction, I will say 90% of my writing happens on my computer. The ideas come too fast, and I need the freedom to be able to put them on the page as quickly as possible. So poetry specifically, I love the Bear app. It's very minimalistic and clean and allows the words to present themselves on the page without a lot of distraction. And for those lines of dialogue or any other lines that I think might be good for my novel or a poem or anything of the sort, I like to use the Notes app in my iPhone. I do keep a written journal, which is more for brainstorming and memory keeping. No concrete writing actually happens in this journal. What are you most looking forward to now that you're a part of Authortube? For myself, I would say the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is community. As somebody who had experiences in graduate school, who's a part of a writing group, and even as I worked on Pages Penned in pandemic, I loved that sense of community, the connectedness. Too often, I think writing is a solitary act. There is no greater sense than feeling understood as a writer, than having your story understood. And I think the best place that can happen is between writers. So I'm really looking forward to making those connections and further building my writing community. I'm also looking forward to having a tangible record of time over this next year. As I said, I'm getting closer to entering the query trenches, and I really want to have documentation of what that's like. And I'm also looking forward to working on the ELPIS pages. There are so many milestones and roadblocks along the way to my dreams, and I don't want to forget what it takes to get there. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, no matter where the day takes you, dream big.